night trying to keep my eyes open. The generator's busted and the AC's broken. I'm talking to the Lord, hope he helps us get there safe. And we made it to the show, now we're singing to the crowd. We're playing encore and they're screaming real loud. Try to get home early, but I know that ain't the case. Yeah, it's another hotel room, sleeping on the floor. I'm hurting in the morning from the night before. Pay my dues, I'm eating, love the road. I'm coming home, baby, leave the porch light on. Breakfast in the morning from 7 to 9, but we just can't seem to wake up in time. We grab a cup of coffee and we're off to hit the road. Now we're running on fumes, no time to kill. We got one more show and it's a shitty doorbell. Breaking my back just to make a couple more. Yeah, it's another hotel room, sleeping on the floor. I'm hurting in the morning from the night before. Pay my dues, I'm eating, love the road. I'm coming home, baby, leave the porch light on. Yeah, it's another hotel room, sleeping on the floor. I'm hurting in the morning from the night before. Pay my dues, I'm eating, love the road. I'm coming home, baby, leave the porch light on. Yeah, it's another hotel room, sleeping on the floor. I'm hurting in the morning from the night before. Pay my dues, I'm eating, love the road. I'm coming home, baby, leave the porch light on.
Ladies and gentlemen, do you want to know why I'm here today? It's not because I want to give you a pep talk or because I want to make you feel good about yourselves. No, I'm here to tell you the truth.
All right, everybody, welcome in and hope that the sound is working good. Give me a thumbs up, a comment, some kind of notice to make sure my microphone is configured as I always like to do at the start of the show. I'm going to change the banner briefly. We are going to talk in depth about my experience at the Bryan Kohberger sentencing, and I'm going to give you more details than you would ever want about that. However, I do want to start with today's announcement. Let me remove this and put this as let me put this as a ticker. I don't know why I didn't do that, but let's make this now a ticker across the board. So we're going to start out just briefly with, it's kind of funny when in relation to the telling you about my adventures or my experiences at the courthouse sentencing of Bryan Kohberger, when we were in line, people were talking about the deaths recently of Ozzy Osbourne, the passing of Ozzy Osbourne, and Malcolm Jamal Warner. By the way, how embarrassing that I typed it as Michael Jamal Warner the other day. And the entire time I talked about it, I was apparently reading off my notes and reading Michael. I know it's Malcolm. I know this. I grew up with Malcolm Jamal Warner. Again, I made the mistake. I was humiliated when somebody later says, the entire show, you called him Michael Jamal Warner. Oh shit, I can't believe that. And I can't undo that. So I apologize for people that may have found that offensive. Only one person called me out on it, thank God. And now I'm calling myself on it. That sucks. But I wanted to make sure we got that clarified. But now we have, it's funny because like I said, people were saying in line, well, where's the 3? People always die in 3s. And I said, I'm not even sure that's a thing. It just seems like everybody waits until the next person passes and then you call it a 3. And yet within, it seems like hours, we have the passing of Hulk Hogan. I think his real name is Terry Gene Bollea. We're going to talk a little bit about Hulk Hogan, not a super lot, and then we'll spend the rest of the time talking about my experiences in the courtroom. And when I talk about Hulk Hogan, I wanted to point out that I was never big into world wrestling, but I was on the TV all the time. I certainly knew who the major figure was. My wife, by the way, the She-Devil, is a major Hulk Hogan fan. She loved the Hulk. She loved Stone Cold Austin. She loved a lot of the figures in that time. I remember several of the big names of that. Ric Flair. Woo! Anyways, I remember names, even though I was never into wrestling. I tease my wife because my wife kind of grew up. She's going to hate this if she sees this. My wife kind of grew up in the trailer park kind of area. I said, you could take the girl out of the trailer park, but you can't take the trailer park out of the girl. She hates it when I say that. Actually, she laughs every time I say that. But the point being is that I heard that one time in a comedian say it and I laughed. Never really bought into the whole World Wrestling Federation thing. It always felt like it was staged. And yet Hulk Hogan, especially during my era, was a major figure. And I was a fan, of course, of the Rocky fight movies. Hulk Hogan had an appearance in Rocky 3 as Thunder Lips. Remember Thunder Lips? The ultimate male versus the ultimate meatball. Anyways, loved Hulk Hogan. And as far and he was he went on to be a 5-time world championship and a WWF, WCW 6 world championships. Was inducted into the World Wrestling Federation, or the World Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2002, I think, and also 2020 a couple times. Anyways, had a very, very storied career. To bring it into true crime space, as we then move into Bryan Kohberger, Hulk Hogan, Terry Bollea, also found himself at the center of a major court case. If you recall, there was the Hulk Hogan sex tapes scandal, where a good friend of his, basically talked him into having relations with his wife. Hey, wouldn't it be great if my wife was banged by Hulk Hogan? Sorry, this is a little bit of an adult show. And so they worked that deal out. It was filmed, and then Gawker, the magazine, got a hold of the private tapes. This led to Gawker being completely destroyed as a media outlet. It was a humongous court case. Hulk Hogan and his investor, Terry Thiel, ended up bringing down Peter Thiel and Hulk Hogan ended up bringing down Gawker entirely, $140 or $144 million lawsuit. It became a big issue about privacy and the rights of the public versus media. Because what happened is, again, Gawker was maintaining the rights of being able to be a media outlet, and it was factually correct information. And just because they got a copy of the tape, they should be able to show it. They ultimately lost their entire company over kind of a privacy / defamation of character lawsuit. They ended up settling, I believe, for about $40 million. But it was a big trial. It was in the court systems. Everybody was trying to get a copy. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people were trying to get a copy of the famous Hulk Hogan sex tapes to see if the ultimate male was absolutely true. Anyways, I digress. I don't want to be disrespectful to Hulk Hogan. I don't know. I was not a big wrestling fan, but my wife certainly was. And I know that she's going to be mourning the loss of Hulk Hogan. She's not here right now. She's out doing some work, so I'm not even sure if she's heard about that now. But I just wanted to acknowledge at the beginning of the show the passing of Hulk Hogan. And as those of you who believe that famous people die in 3s, there's your third one. So we've had Ozzy Osbourne, Malcolm Jamal Warner, and now the Hulk Hogan legend, all passing within a week, right? Hasn't it been just a week? Amazing. Just something to reflect on and think about. And there you have it. All right, let's take this banner off the screen to get the distraction out of the way. and let's talk about my thumbnail. Let's talk about my thoughts, and let's talk about my appearance at the sentencing of Bryan Kohberger. And I want to make you aware that most of this is just going to be me ranting, not ranting. This is not going to be a rant. This is me sharing with you an experience. I get very, very detailed. I have an eye for details. I've always wanted to be a writer, so I have kind of an eye for details sometimes. And so I wanted to, it's Nina. Oh my God, Nina, I'm going to talk about you today. This is so cool. Thank you so much for checking in. I'm going to talk about Nina. I'm going to, Nikki in here, Nina. This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun because I wanted to tell you about Nina. I have her highlighted in my show. So let me tell you a key takeaway from the beginning of, I guess, the key takeaway, the moment that I just got done with it. I'm going to start with my ending thought, and then we're going to go back and cover the entire night as I experienced it. And since we have somebody who was in there, they can call my bluff on this and tell me whether or not I'm full of shit. So here's what my key takeaway was. I had a moment where I realized every family in this case, including the Gonsalves now family, basically are okay with the way it moving on. Let me put it that way. Every family is okay with moving on. Every family expressed that they either want to never hear about this again. They never want to talk about Bryan Kohberger. They don't want to talk about his name. They don't want to give him power. They don't want to give him any extra part of their life. And they are done and they are ready to move on. For the families, this is closure. Bryan Kohberger will go away and that'll be it. Maybe one day, some people hope, some families, and you know who they are, will hope that they'll read the news that Bryan Kohberger was killed in prison, and that's what they're hoping for. And maybe that will be the closure for them. But a lot of the families have already moved on as it is. In addition, Etsy's Crime Maze is in here as well. By the way, Etsy's Crime Maze, I'm working out a possibility of going on with Etsy's Crime Maze and Ellie on their show to talk to them a little bit about it as well. So thanks for stepping in, man. So so my first thought was the families have moved on. Bryan Kohberger has accepted a plea, the guilty plea. He's admitted guilt. When given the opportunity to comment or say something, Bryan Kohberger respectfully, very, very strange word, I respectfully decline. Super strange that you wouldn't just, if you were the killer, and I realize, oh my God, devil's advocates, he's admitted to be the killer. We'll get to that in a little bit here. If he was the killer, saying he respectfully declines, what part is respected? I remember, I don't know if you guys heard it on camera. I don't know if you heard it. I think it was Christy Gonsalves. She was behind me and to the left. I think I heard her say, when he said I respectfully decline, she said, surprise, surprise. Sarcastically, that we knew you weren't going to say anything. We knew you weren't going to give any closure to the families. We knew you weren't going to tell us what happened or why, because you're a piece of shit. Surprise, surprise. So that was, I don't know if that came out on camera, but that was clearly said behind me. Maybe Nina, who was in the courtroom right beside me, Nina sat right beside me. Maybe she heard, and whether she can confirm that was Christy Gonsalves that said surprise, surprise. But that's what I believe happened when he respectfully declined. But my thought at the moment was, here we go. Hitler, by the way, and I'm kind of working reverse. I'm telling you the end, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to take you to the very, very beginning, because that's what I do. I'm kind of a storyteller. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of the night. But I'm going to, so Nikki says, yes, that was Christy that said, surprise, surprise. I thought so. And I don't know, again, that would have been picked up on camera. So there's a little bit of an inside thing that you might not have heard if you weren't sitting in the courtroom. Hitler as well basically laid down the narrative that YouTubers, everyone out there, should be ashamed if they continue to talk about this for clicks. I think that was one of the words he used. There'll be those out there who will continue to try to get clicks, try to get views, to keep talking about this. He basically was telling everyone, this is over. Stop talking about it. If you're a person who's out there trying to talk about Kohberger for clicks, you're disgusting. Someone is going to try to write a book about this. You are also a disgusting human being. Nobody should be trying to write a book about this. All of those things were said. It's narrative shaping. That's what we do. And I understand that he has the right to do that. Having said that, there was that part of me that said, well, here we go. How long do we continue to talk about something when the families want to move on, when the person who's accused of the crime has stated that he did it and is willing to go away for the rest of his life? How long do we continue to talk about something that for most people directly involved They're ready to move on. And the most difficult part is there was a part of my show. And by the way, I'm not moving on entirely in case you're thinking that's the ultimate goal, but I want to talk about my thought process as I went through it. So there's a part of me that said the same thing. Is it time to move on? Is it time to move on? Because I can no longer say, I want justice for the families. I want the families to find out what really happened. Why can I not say that? Because the families got up in court and basically said, we don't care anymore. We're done. We want to move on with our lives. We're ready to move on. So I can't say that what I talk about, I'm doing for the families. There's no part of me that can say I'm doing it for the families, because the families made it clear in the courtroom that day, they want to move on with their lives. They don't want to talk about it anymore. They don't want to be harassed about it anymore. They don't want to, well, I wouldn't say every family member doesn't want to do media exposure, because I bet you there's still going to be some family members going out on the media for maybe a decade to come. But that's my guess. But the point being is that that was my momentary thought. I thought, is this over? Is it over because of two things? One, the families want it over, and so therefore we're not doing anything to help the families by bringing up who else might have been involved, because they don't care. It seems like they don't care. There were a couple of families who made it clear, I just want to know why. And that why may include alternate perpetrators or other suspects. And so if they truly want to know why, then maybe they do want to hear the full story. So there's that. But for the most part, people were ready to move on. And so I thought to myself, how long do we keep kicking the can down the road? Now, here's the problem, and the reason why it's not over. Because documents are going to be unsealed. Documents are going to come out. NYPD, Moscow PD already posted a crap ton of documents, which I haven't even had a chance to start looking through. I downloaded all the zip files. It's like 800 gigabytes or some shit. It's an enormous amount of stuff. People are already commenting about it, because apparently people have more time on their hands than I possibly do. I can't believe how many people have read entire books and all the documents in there, and I get through it in a time. Now, here's the only positive thing about that. If you've watched my show, I catch things other people don't catch. So it doesn't matter if somebody out there, another YouTuber, has read this a month ago. I'll catch something new in there. That's what I do. But, and as Robin the Redneck says, there's some humdingers in there. So I will have to get to it, and I will see if I see the same humdingers that I do. That's another part that I have too, is it's a little difficult sometimes for me to watch everyone else's exposure or comments on something that I haven't looked at myself, because I don't want to be prejudiced about it. I would rather see the things that I see first and then comment. By the same token, part of my job is to answer questions like, what do you think about Pavarotti's take? What do you think about Lana from Truth and Transparency's take? And for me to bury my head in the sand and say, I have no idea what those guys are talking about, makes me look like an arrogant prick, like I don't give a shit what the top names and the in the field, if you will, of true crime are saying about it, for me to be like, I don't know what they talk about. I don't listen to them. That's not true. I just want to have my own take and not suck. That's the thing. Have your own take and don't suck. Anyways, let me give you a little breakdown. One of the things that I do is I like to break things down as if you were there. So I arrived at Ada County Courthouse at 11:30 at night the night before. Now, the first time I arrived at 3-ish in the morning, and Nina, who was in the room, right, was there ahead of time, and was there since midnight, I think it was. So this time I showed up, she wasn't there. I didn't see her at first. And then we continued, or I showed up, and there was 20 people in line. Last time there was 4 people in line. I think I was actually number 4. Actually, no, I was number 5, but later on got put number 4 on the list because somebody who was there before me stepped away and they didn't get written down on the list, and they were okay with taking 5. And I was about to shut my hell mouth and not say anything. Point being is that I was at some point as the 20-something people, and this time we were not allowed to be up at the courtroom. Here's one thing I want to tell you right now. It gave me an uneasy feeling the entire hearing. Last time there was a much larger police presence. Sheriff's Department were out several times during the night. We didn't see the Sheriff's Department all night long. At least I didn't get to see the Sheriff's Department all night long. We even called the Sheriff's Department. A certain person in line called the Sheriff's Department and said, hey, look, things are getting a little cagey out here. People are arguing about how this is going to work. Here's how it was going to work. The first time we showed up, the 4 or 5 of us at 3 o'clock in the morning, some of us since midnight, were literally sitting in front of the courthouse and allowed to line up. This time they had a sign up there saying that anybody, I didn't read the sign, I didn't go up there, but a sign basically saying anybody who's caught on camera, because they had cameras all over the front of the courthouse, going up there trying to stand in line prior to 4 a.m. would be not allowed to come in, and that they're kind of watching you on camera. That was kind of what I heard from the line. So we were across the street, lined up on along a grass thing, and there were chairs, camp chairs everywhere. Another thing that didn't happen the first time, because nobody had camp chairs. We expected we had to go straight from line right into the courthouse. We wouldn't have time to put away camp chairs. So now all of a sudden they get there and there's camp chairs everywhere. There's 20 people in line. I'm thinking to myself, and then I'm asking, like, where's the line start? Well, this is kind of like not really a line, it's just a thing. But if there is a line, it's back over there a little further away down the street. So I went there, and I was already unsettled by the fact that nobody knew that there was a line. It was just people hanging out. In short order, I saw Nina again from the first time that I was there, and then she was the first person in line last time, and I was like, oh, look, you're here. She had actually been there earlier, and she'd stepped away, so when I showed up, I didn't see her at first. It was kind of fun because I don't remember talking to her the first time I was there about YouTube. Maybe I did, but she said something about, you're that YouTuber guy, right? And I thought to myself, oh, somebody finally knows who the Devil's Advocates is. She's asking if I'm a YouTuber. Now, by the way, this is where it got kind of cool for me. It sounds a little prickish and arrogant, but I don't mean it that way. It's weird to be recognized. So shortly, I mean, hours, was it hours? Maybe it was hours after being there, somebody actually said, hey, you're DA, aren't you? And I was like, you know who I am? And it's like, well, yeah, I watch your show. And I was like, that's fucking weird. Like, that's so cool. So we talked to that individual. That individual is also a YouTuber. I think at some point that YouTuber, I know the YouTuber told me their username. I don't want to say their username because I thought they said something about they try to keep their face off of camera, or they try to not let people know. I can't remember exactly, but something about their identity. They didn't want people to know exactly who they were. So while I've got photos and video with that individual with us in line, I don't know if it's appropriate to point them out. Later on, it was cool again with this moment of being recognized, if you will, with somebody saying, hey, you're DA, aren't you? I watch your show. Somebody else in my perspective, because I don't know everybody, comes up to me in line after we've been in line for hours, and she's like, oh my God, you made it. And she's talking to me like I know who she is. You made it. I'm so excited. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, I watch your show. And I'm like, oh, that's so weird. People are recognizing me online. I ended up getting AP News asking who I was. I had Fox and Friends. I don't remember her name. Very pretty reporter that came up and interviewed. I think Nina got interviewed as well. Didn't you? Anyways, and also one of the other people who watch our show was interviewed. And so it was just a weird moment. And then there was that moment where an individual brought up a box of donuts. This was funny. Somebody brought up a box of donuts, and I hear them say, Lee. And I'm like, what? And she's like, you get your first pick of the donuts before I pass them down the line. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm being treated. Oh yeah. And then I had somebody literally grabbed me and took a selfie with me, and another YouTuber that recognized me. It was funny. At first she didn't recognize me, and someone said to her, that's Devil's Advocates. And she spun around and she's like, oh, she grabbed her phone. We took a selfie, and I was like, I almost feel like a little mini celebrity. It was a very cool moment, and it was a little humbling as well, because I was realizing that everything I say and do now, people are going to be like, I was in line with that mother effer, and Devil's Advocate said this or did this or jumped the line. That's another thing that happened. So Nina and I were talking about how to handle the line, and one of the things that came out amongst some people, and I'm not going to name names, some people were like, you know what, screw it. Like, there is no organization here. Nobody knows where the front of the line is. And I'm not going to just basically take somebody's word for it that they're the front of the line because they say they're the front of the line. And I remember from last time they told us, I know I'm taking a long time. If we go a little long today, I'm going to allow us to go long. So I'm not going to cut this off and cut out the courtroom stuff by telling you 30 minutes of outside the courtroom. But I want to share with you the experience. There was a time last time where the officers, the sheriff's department, came out and said, hey, look, I know you guys are keeping a list of who was here first. And that's great. If you guys can police yourself and stay in the line that you've got written down on a piece of paper, that's fine and dandy. But I am not going to enforce it. No law enforcement is going to enforce it. It is technically first come, first serve. And I thought to myself, well, as long as we all play nice and we're all civilized, then the list is the list. right? The list is the list. And so I was number 23 on that list. Now I'm cutting some things out because that list got sketchy. Okay, I'm not going to completely cut it out. There was a moment where the sprinklers came on at like 3 a.m. And everyone started getting wet in line. And so the whole line collapsed and everybody ran across the street. Now by one way across the street, like to our west, for example, is the courthouse. But we went like north across the street, across a different street to line up across another building. And when we got over there, it was a clusterfuck because part of the line wanted to go east-west and part wanted to go north-south. And so there was two lines, and now we're arguing about which is the back of the line. People are getting upset. Nobody has a list. It was a complete shit show. There were ladies that were showing up late who didn't want to respect the fact that I was there long before them. So when I stood in line in front of them, they're like, excuse me, the back of the line's over here. And I'm like, I've been here for hours before you got here. And it was just getting dicey. And I was showing to some of the people in line my anxiety triggers, because my anxiety was like, this is horrible. Like, I don't want to have to fight for my right to party. Beastie Boys is still on the mind. Somebody tell Beastie Boys is still a thing, devil advocate. I realized Beastie Boys can still be a thing, but back in the day, they were really a thing and they fought for their right to party. I was having to fight for my right to party and keep my spot in line, but I didn't want to jump anyone. And again, I told people, like, here's the thing. People are now recognizing who I am. If I go sprint across the field and elbow some bitch in the face, no, I don't mean to be disparaging to women by calling them bitches. It's just a euphemism or whatever the hell you want to say it. I'm just being funny. But if I elbow someone in the face trying to make the front of the line because F them, I'm going to be first, then it'd be like, here's a video of devil's advocates giving a haymaker to a 90-year-old woman and dropping her in the middle of the street. That shit's bad press. So I was just going to basically, I'm going to stand in line. I'm going to walk calmly like a civilized human being, and I'm going to hope for the best. By the way, Nina, I don't know if I'm allowed to tell how far you came, but Nina came from a shit ton far away. And this is what makes her a rock star. I'm going to tell you her story a little bit on this. This is what makes her a rock star. She told me when she got there that, look, nobody's enforcing this line, and I didn't come all this way. A long ways. I will say it was in excess of 10 hours. Well, I don't want to tell you where she came from. In excess of 10 hours to drive there and be there. She shows up and she's like, I'm going to be damned if I'm not going to get in because I allowed somebody else to tell me, no, you're number 57 in line. Like, if there's no organization, I'm going to be at the front of the line. Bless her heart. Nina's in the chat. Yeah, she was in the chat at the very beginning. She identified herself. Nikki, I think is her username here. She identified herself, so I can do that. So anyways, bless her heart. She ended up hanging out with me. She was at the front of the line, ready to sprint to the courthouse. I admire you so much for what you did that night, by the way. I admire you so much. You came that way, and she worked, it almost brings tears to my eyes. She worked her way back in line to me to hang out with me. At some point, people were jumping in front and trying to push back. And we were going through like a cattle, a line, with a wall on one side and a handrail on the other. She literally put her hands out on both sides and held onto the rail and said, get up here with me. I want my group up here. And I was like, oh my fucking God, like, people don't fucking stand up for me like that. Like, I was Nikki, that was the best. Thank you so much. Means the world to me. So I'm so glad that you can be here to hear me thank you again. I know I thanked you in line, but I wanted to thank you again. It was an amazing, touching moment. It's still bringing me a little bit of an emotional thing. It was a touching moment for me. All right. So Brian Antonin showed up, Inside Edition showed up. We were right beside Law and Crime, Fox and Friends, all the news, AP News was right beside us. Again, we're in there with media. And here's the thing. This was a number. I know I'm taking a long time to get there. So some guy about, 25, 30 people behind us was with the Spokane Press. He was a reporter from a Spokane newspaper or TV station, I think it was. And he had a Facebook page and he posted, and somehow this shit worked its way up the line to us. And he posted something to the effect of, I hope to God that Idaho taxpayers and people who are the media can actually get into this to this courtroom because there's damn TikTokers ahead of us. And our thought was, then bitch, get here earlier. We've all been sitting out here. So, the first person in line, by the way, The first person in line had been there since 5:30 the night before, 5:30 p.m. They were, and they kind of stumbled upon it like almost by accident. They showed up and they're like, what's going on here with all the TVs? Oh, it's Kohberger's sentencing. Well, shit, I'm jumping in line. And so they were there since 5:30. But anyways, so that was, and so he's bitching. He gets there late. And he's like 30 people behind us. And he's like, well, I sure hope to God that taxpayers and the media get in there instead of these damn TikTokers. Oh my God, did he get kicked in the balls? Like literally people were taking out their phones and signing up for his website to talk shit about him in line and calling him a little whiny bitch and asking him how the view was from back there. And it was pretty fucking funny. It was pretty fucking funny. So it's one of those, and I tried to stay out. I'm like, I don't want to be petty. I'm laughing, but I don't want to, but I was laughing. I'll admit it. It was for some funny shit. Yeah. Show Nikki some love. That was amazing. So anyways, it was a humorous moment. We were passing phones around with the guy's page. People were friend requesting him so they could talk shit to him. It was a little over the top. And here's I'm going to get us into the courtroom because I think I can get us into the courtroom. At some point, somebody finally decided to take a list, right? So all these people are shimmying around. We're getting shuffled in line. By the way, there's a group, and I'm not going to mention their nationality because I feel like you'll turn it into a racist thing. But they did have an ethnic similarity. Three ladies came and they were there the first time. Now I want to say this, I'm not going to call them out directly. I don't know who they work for, but they knew people in media. They showed up late the first time we were there. They found the list keeper who was keeping a list the first time, sat down next to her, and I heard them right in front of me trying to work the friendship angle of, hey, we know you, can you put us at the top of the list? And I was thinking, you assholes, you came in late and you're trying to work your friendship angle to get to the top of the list. And it didn't work for them, thank God, because the list keeper had some kind of moral integrity. However, fast forward to this thing. That same list keeper showed up late. It was a clusterfuck already. People had been shimmy-shammed around and we were in a different order than we were at the beginning of the night. But I was still relatively 20 spots from the front of the line like I was when I got there. So I was relatively happy with it. I wanted Nina to be at the front of the line. She deserved it. And she was at one point at the front of the line. Bless her heart. Again, she came back to hang out with me. So that was amazing. But anyways, they took down a list and I wrote my name in at 23. I took pictures. I shared it. I shared the number. I shared it with you. And you'll see Nina on the list right in front of me. Nina's right in front of me. There's me. And there's Law and Crime. The lady that was holding the place was a line sitter. I know you're getting so much information, way more. You're like, fucking get to the Kohberger thing. I'm getting there. I just like to tell stories. Anyways, the lady behind me, she was there the first time as well. She was right in front of me the first time. Now she's right behind me at this time. The three of us chatted up a storm. Was her name Chantel? Shit, she's on the list. I can't remember. Anyways, she ended up getting replaced. She was a line sitter. She's paid to sit in line all night long for Law and Crime to show up. Law and Crime showed up. We started talking. I got on camera with Law and Crime. Some of you posted that into the chat as well, saying, hey, look, Lee, you're on Law and Crime. So I was with Law and Crime. We were talking about it, and and she relieved her line sitter. So hopefully I hear from her as well. I gave my business cards to the two of them, said I wanted to hear from them again. But here's what happened. Number one in line, I remember this. I don't want to say MFer because I don't know him personally, but I remember a guy that was from Fox News. The first time I was there at the plea deal, Fox News was right in front of me. He was number 4, I think. I was number 5, or he was number 3 and I was number 4. I remember him. I talked to him in line. He wasn't there. He wasn't there for 3 hours or maybe even 4 hours. And then suddenly, when it's about time to start, he's at the front, the very front of the line. And the front of the line kept growing. What happened was, number one was a media person. As more and more media people came that they know, and they're all buddies, the media kept just migrating into the front of the line. And I thought, no problem. I'm number 23 online. I got the screenshot, bitch. Like, I got the screenshot. Do you, Fox News reporter, have the screenshot showing you've been here all night long? No, you don't. But you know what? Doesn't matter. The doors opened. We started going in. They started handing us torn off receipts with our number. I went from number 23 to number 32. So I was now number 32 in line, and there was nothing I can do about it. You know, you could say, look, there's a list. Don't care. We're not enforcing the list. They made that clear earlier in the night. So Nina, goddamn it, went from being potentially number 1 to being number 31. And I was 32, I believe, is how that worked. So we got into the line a little irritated, especially when we were told we don't know how many seats are going to be available. What happened was we were funneled into what would become known as the overflow room. There was about 150 chairs, all numbered. On the backs of the chairs as you came in, all of them were numbered with a number. They said, please take your seat in correspondence with the ticket number you were handed at the door. I sit at number 32, and I'm waiting for my opportunity to get in. They're saying, look, families are being seated right now. When the courtroom is done being seated, we will count the number of seats left over, and we'll be working our way from number 1 seat up to whoever the last person can fit in the courtroom is. Everyone else stays here, and you watch on the overflow room television. You won't be in the courtroom. So I'm on pins and needles. Am I going to get in? Is 32 good enough? And God damn it, I was 23. I know that was good enough. Nina should have been 1, and if she would have been good enough, is she going to miss? There was a moment, and I shit you not, I didn't say this to Nina, and I'm not just saying this for this moment. There was a moment where I thought to myself, I will be okay if Nina makes number 31 and they had to shut it off, and I don't make it at 32, because she deserves it. She drove super far. She fought for my right. And so if she gets in and I don't, I'm okay with it. I'll walk away being okay because she got in. But I was going to be heartbroken if they stopped at 30 and she didn't get in at 32 or 31. Here's the great part. We got in, obviously. I was in the courtroom. I think Nina told me that it looks like they capped the number at 40. There was only a few people behind us. We barely got in. But we were in that courtroom. And all I can say is so cool for all of us that we got to experience that. All right, let's talk about some of the stuff that happened once we were inside. I will say this, and it's not going to be super popular with some of the people that watch this show. The first thing that I really observed, well, first of all, when I came in, I'm scanning the audience, and I realized, oh my God, like, this is weird. This is surreal. I shit you not. This is surreal. I'm so close to the people I see on TV every single day. I'm so close to the people that I watch do interviews every single day. I had Steve Gonsalves behind me and to my right. I could have wadded up a piece of toilet paper and hit him with a piece of paper. He was that close. At some point during the first break, I'm getting ahead of myself. At some point, the first break, Steve Gonsalves and I come out of our respective aisles, and we are within. I could have touched him on the shoulder, and it's weird because I realize he's not like a super celebrity, but I see him all the fucking time. I listen to his interviews all the time. I inspect everything he says for every little nuance. And so I could have reached out and touched him. And here's the weird part. As a male, I literally could have gone and sat and taken a piss right beside Steve Gonsalves. We were all heading to a bathroom break. I could have followed Steve Gonsalves and took a piss with Steve Gonsalves. Is that weird? I'm just letting you know, like, there was that moment of like, I could literally go take a leak with Steve Gonsalves. Do I want to be next to Steve Gonsalves if he recognizes me as the YouTuber who said, you know what, I don't fucking know what Steve's doing. Like, maybe it's a bad idea to be with your dick in your hand next to, sorry, that's a little blunt. Point being is that maybe it's not a good idea to be right next to Steve Gonsalves in the pisser. But anyway, I had that moment. Also, what was weird is they came back, and I will get back to the start of the start. I'm kind of working out of order as my mind goes through it. When they came back from break, Hunter Johnson walks in, and literally I could have touched him. He just walked right up to me, and I'm like, it's fucking Hunter Johnson. Like, I just watched you on Prime like a week ago, and I literally could have like, hey, dude. There was no recognition on his face that he knew who I was, so that's good too. Point being is that it was just weird. Christy was there. I saw Christy. I saw Olivia. I recognized a whole bunch of people. Ben Mogan. Ben Mogan is right kind of beside me a little bit like he was the first time. Recognized a lot more of the faces than I did the first time. But you know who I didn't see? I did not see Bryan Kohberger's family. Now, I know his dad's face very well. I did not see his dad. Many of you have confirmed for me that I don't think his dad was there. Some people said that they saw Bryan Kohberger come in and look at his family and says that he loved them. I didn't see that. And I didn't see his family. I don't think I would recognize his mother if his mother wasn't sitting right next to his father, because I recognize Bryan's father from very, very quickly. I did not see Bryan's father, and so I don't know. And apparently his mom and sister were there, and that would make sense. If they weren't sitting right with his father, I probably wouldn't have recognized him. If they were sitting with him, I'd be like, oh yeah, I think I now recognize the faces. So for what it's worth. The disturbing part, I'm going to get to the most disturbing part in a way, because of those who believe that Bryan Kohberger had a presumption of innocence going in. For those who believe even after Bryan Kohberger said he was guilty, that we're not sure that he didn't take a guilty plea to save his own life or out of fear or out of protection of his family. There are many questions. Still, I should say, there are still many questions about what exactly Bryan Kohberger did or didn't do and what involvement he has. By the way, there's a big moment, big moment I'm going to make a lot about. I'm going to talk about Ali Benevento. My attorney friend and I were talking. Ali said, are you in the courtroom? I said, yes, I'm in the courtroom. I think I can see you in the courtroom. So, you know, Ali and I were talking while I was in the courtroom. Very cool moment. For those of you who know Ali Benevento, that was a special moment. So here's the thing. First thing I thought when Bryan Kohberger came in that really, really bothered me is Bryan Kohberger looks like he was enjoying being there. That disturbed me. When he came in, he had a bit of a cocky swagger. He seemed to have a smile. He seemed to almost be giddy, and that's my personal feeling. It felt a little bit like he was happy to be there and looking forward to the event. There was a time or two, and then I'm gonna go back to the but. So there was a time or two when I felt I saw a micro expression from Bryan Kohberger where it looked like he was trying to hide back a grin or a smile. If that's the case, it looks creepy. It looks like somebody who might be some of the things that they claim that he is, right? That there was some kind of joy that he got out of being tormenting everybody and having to share their experiences and their torment and how much he destroyed their lives, that there might have been a moment of joy in that for him. And that bothered me to see that on his face. And I may have not been seeing it right. Other people have told me that they think they saw that too. It sounds like Luigi said he thinks he saw that too. Yes. Luigi, yes. When they were talking about Maddie, he seemed to get a little smile on his face. And it fucking bothered me. I'll tell you. As a person who's maintained that Bryan Kohberger may not have even done it at all, but if he did it with others. It was a bit of a soul-wrenching, like, oh fuck, did that motherfucker just grin? Come on. So I mean, to be fair, I'm just gonna tell you how I felt. It was a sickening moment, but it was brief. So there it is. Let me tell you another weird thing from my perspective, and I could be 100% wrong. So the courtroom was laid out in such a way that where the jury would normally sit had a bunch of police officers. One of which I recognized as Chief Fry from Moscow PD. He was not in uniform. I believe he's retired. Next to him was a uniformed police officer. And I could be 100% wrong with this because Chief Fry was seated in such a way that for me to look at whoever's on the podium addressing Bryan Kohberger or the court. By the way, if you didn't see it, and I'm sure you did, most people who addressed Bryan Kohberger did so with the podium facing Hitler. Not turned to the left to face Bryan Kohberger directly. You may have seen the big show Steve Gonsalves made by very loudly and very visibly turning the podium to face Bryan Kohberger and basically look him in the eye and be like, you piece of shit, you messed with the wrong families, right? That was a classic Steve Gonsalves moment. He turned the podium later, I think the next person up, turned the podium back to the way it was for everybody else. It was a Steve moment. So most people were looking forward to it. The point being I'm getting to is Chief Fry was looking kind of in the direction of the podium, but every time I looked over and decided to take a moment to look at those officers and stuff that were in the jury area, I swear to God, Chief Fry was giving me a stare down. Every time I looked over, it looked like Chief Fry was staring directly at me. It was the creepiest feeling. I would look to his left, I would look to his right. Nobody else was looking at me. I felt like Chief Fry was staring at me the entire trial. He was probably, maybe he's got like a shifty left eye and and I'm not saying that insulting, like literally maybe his eyes aren't centered. And so he was looking at the person on the podium, but every time I looked over there, it felt like he was looking right at me. And I never felt that way before. I never felt like self-conscious, like somebody staring at me. Oh, there was a moment. So every time I looked over, Chief Fry it felt like he was staring directly at me. Like he just was fixated on me. It was creepy. There was a moment, it was weird to me. The first time in the sentencing plea, At the sentencing plea, Bryan Kohberger never made eye contact, in my opinion, with anyone in the audience. Bryan Kohberger locked eyes with me for a moment or two. He was scanning the audience for the first time. And again, was Bryan Kohberger enjoying the moment? Was he soaking in the moment? Did he want to remember faces? But there was a moment when Bryan Kohberger looked into the audience. I thought it was a little odd because he didn't do that the first time. He looked into the audience. We locked eyes. I'm not trying to say this for sensationalism. We locked eyes, and it was long enough of locking eyes that I was like, holy shit, Bryan Kohberger just stared at me. It was a weird moment. It was surreal again, because it was like he acknowledged me. I acknowledged him. It was fucking weird and it was probably a second. At best, maybe it was a half second, but it was long enough that it felt like a linger, like he was scanning the audience. And when he looked at me, we locked eyes, and it was like, wow, I just made an eyeball recognition with Bryan Kohberger. So that was an interesting moment. What else can I tell you? I'm trying to give you some interesting moments. Here's an interesting moment. Ben Mogan went up on, as many of you watch. I'm just going to hit some of the highlights. Ben Mogan went up, the bald kind of individual, and many people told me. My wife actually texted me while Ben Mogan was on the stand, and she says, that guy is on meth. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I see an emotional father. I don't know if I see meth, right? But it was a weird thing that my wife texted me and said, that guy's on meth. Here's what's interesting. When my wife texted me and said that guy's on meth, and it was Ben Mogan, I believe, and Ben started out by saying that he's had a history of addiction issues and stuff like that. But when my wife said that, I looked to the police so there was federal marshals behind me. There was 3 marshals behind me, and there was a marshal with an eye view over by the podium where all the officers were at that were standing there for security. By the way, another heads up, there was probably twice the amount of security in the courthouse for Bryan Kohberger's change of plea than there was for his sentencing, which I felt was odd, and I commented many times in my stream. Something feels off. There's hardly any officers here. In the waiting room, when there was over 100 people sitting there in those chairs waiting, there was only 2 marshals. I only saw one of them for the longest time. One female marshal was in the back of the room watching the door. And I'm like, how the fuck is there only one marshal in this entire room? This is a place where somebody could get killed. Somebody's going to jump the fence, and they're going to try to choke out Kohberger. And we're sitting in here with 100 and something people, and there's one marshal. The first time I came, there was a wall of 5 marshals blocking the hallway, so you couldn't even see past them to who was coming into the courtroom ahead of us. This time, none of that. Almost no visible security. And I commented, something feels off. It's like they don't want to have a lot of security. Like they're going to allow something to happen. That's what it felt like to me in my conspiratorial mind. I was like, are they going to allow something to happen? Where the fuck is all the security? This is twice the show that it was. Twice the show. And I only saw one marshal at the time. Then later on, I saw in the opposite corner of that marshal, another marshal. And by the way, and I don't mean to make this disparaging, I'm just going to tell you my observations. I'm an attention to detail sometimes kind of guy. The first time I went there, let me tell you, the federal marshals were beefy, muscular men, 6-foot-something men, very muscular. You can tell they work out, vests on, very intimidating human beings. This was a short, 5'5" female officer, not disparaging to women. I'm not trying to say that. And a very, very, very overweight, heavy set federal marshal male in the room. And that was it. And I thought to myself, what the fuck's going on? There's a quarter of the federal marshals that there were. At that point, I hadn't seen not a single sheriff's department. And the 2 marshals they have in there is a 5'4" woman or 5'5" woman and a really overweight marshal. And what happened to all the beefy, like linebacker marshals that were there for the sentencing plea? It just felt super off to me. And I commented on that a little bit as well. And again, I'm not trying to body shame anybody by the overweight. I was 100 and something pounds heavier when I started last year around June. And so I've been fat my entire life. I'm not trying to body shame. I'm just saying that compared to the linebacker, muscular marshals they had last time, it was like, where the hell are all the linebackers? Like we had beefy human beings here last time. Anyways, going back to Ben Mogan. Ben Mogan's on the stand. My wife's texting me, that guy's on meth. I look over at the federal marshals behind me and to the other side. Several people have said that he looked drugged. And the officers' hands had gone to their guns. I literally saw hands that were up here now down and resting on their pistols. And when Ben Mogan was done and he stepped away, and a federal marshal walked up to, basically, because this was part of their procedure, they would walk up the aisle between myself and the media and the public, and where the families were. They would walk up whenever someone came and went from the podium, just to make sure nobody from the audience did anything weird with the families, or vice versa, right? So that officer would always come into the aisle between us, separating us, right? And so when the officer stepped up after having his hand on his pistol the whole time and let Ben Mogan return to his seat, I saw, because I pay attention to details, when he looked at the other officer at the back of the room and he shrugged his shoulders like, I guess nothing's going to happen. So there was a moment where I picked up in my attention to detail, officers expected something, it seemed like, from Ben Mogan. Maybe they knew he was on drugs. Maybe they thought he was on drugs. Maybe they got a tip off something was going to happen. But there was a tension when he went to the podium. Officers' hands were on their pistols. And then when he went back without incident to his seat, one officer shrugged like, okay, well, I guess that's it. We're not going to have a shit show today. So I don't know. If you were a conspiracy theorist, was he supposed to? And they're like, well, shit, I guess he's not going to do it. Is that like a conspiracy? I'm not saying this, but a conspiracy theorist would be like, we're going to have low security, and if something happens, we're going to blame this on, oh, you know what? There was lax security that day. We were short-staffed. Shit happens. And then it didn't happen. They're like, well, fuck it. I guess that's not going to happen. Was there a setup to allow something to happen, or were they just simply tipped off that they should pay attention to him, and we're like, well, I guess that's it. That was probably the most dangerous person we're going to have on the stand. Now, actually, there was a more dangerous individual, and I can't remember his name. Who was the father that stepped up and said that he's a Christian, so he would never kill somebody, but he wished he could take Bryan Kohberger out in the forest for a few minutes? I can't remember which father that was, but that person was actually far more aggressive in threats, saying, and he looked like he was about to rush Kohberger, in my opinion. That guy was tall, fit, and looked like he was in construction, and looked like he was holding himself back. Man, if I could just have a couple minutes with you. And I can't remember who he was representing, what family he was with, but I thought he was going to rush. I thought he was going to rush Kohberger, but that didn't happen. And, oddly enough, I looked at the officers. They didn't have their hands on their gun with that guy, stepfather of Maddie. Okay, thank you so much. So those were some of the moments from inside the courtroom. What Olivia did on the stand. Where am I looking for time? I'm almost an hour. That's okay. We're probably gonna go about an hour and 20 minutes. Maybe I want to leave some room for some questions and answers. So maybe an hour and a half. All right. So maybe it was Anna's uncle. Okay. Anyways, the point being is that individual looked pretty intimidating and looked like he was physically wanting to exact violence there in the courtroom, but that didn't happen. Olivia. So Steve Gonzalez had it with both barrels. He essentially all but threatened to have Kohberger killed in prison or beaten up, telling him multiple times that they're looking forward to him going to prison, where he's going to have, his welcome gift that Steve Gonzalez has basically promised several times. They all but, as I said to one individual, I won't name the name, I said to one individual, they all but told the court they're going to have him killed. And another person told me he didn't just all but say it, they said it. They're basically telling Kohberger, we're going to have you killed when you go to prison. And how that's going to be, I don't know. I guess you can't hold the Gonzalez family responsible for what a prisoner does inside the cell. They just encouraged it. But it seemed to me that they were encouraging someone to kill Bryan Kohberger or at least severely damage him. And they're looking forward to what happens to Bryan Kohberger when he gets moved. By the way, can't wait till you get there. You've got a surprise coming. And that was, as somebody wrote to me privately, that was a disgusting moment in the trial, regardless of how you feel about it. We understand that the feeling that people are raw emotions and they're going to say things. Olivia's address, as you know, got a resounding clap from the audience. Many people have asked me, how was that allowed? It was not disruptive. You have to understand the judge is going to allow a little bit of extreme sobbing, a little bit of clapping, a little bit of oohs and ahs and gasps. Those things are expected. It's only when it becomes disruptive and we can't get back order in the court that it's a problem. Those clappings was not a disruption of the court. It was a moment in time, and so it's allowed, and I'm okay with it myself. But Olivia's breakdown was clever in the sense, I'm sure many of you caught it, but Bryan Kohberger allegedly had written that survey of criminals of what were you thinking when you committed the crime? You know, what was going through your mind? Olivia turned that around and put it on Kohberger. What were you thinking when you killed my sister? What was going through your thought? And basically was mocking him with the survey of asking him to answer those questions. How were you thinking when you decided to kill my sister? How were you thinking when you did that? That was clever on her part. And it earned her, a clap of response. There was a lot of, to be honest with you, and let me say this: I don't begrudge the families doing this. So please understand that I don't begrudge the families doing this. But there was a lot of juvenile insults, constantly reminding Kohberger that he's nothing, he's worth nothing, nobody gives a shit about you, you're a piece of shit, nobody will remember your name, you're a loser, you're dysfunctional, nobody likes you, and go eat some worms. That kind of stuff felt juvenile. It was name calling. It's okay. I expected that. I expected a lot more people to tell Kohberger literally to go rot in hell than they did. I think only one person or maybe two told him to go to hell or to rot in hell or you're going to hell. I expected almost every single person to express that kind of sentiment. The one, was it an aunt? The aunt who said, I forgive you, and I just want you to know that if you're ever willing to talk, there's no judgments. I just want to hear what happened. No judgment. That was a touching moment I felt in the courtroom. Some people saw my eyes were on her. I had a woman's head, by the way, blocking Kohberger's face most of the time. In order to see, I had to lean forward and I had to eyeball between, and I had to block Nina's view. So I had to get my face in front of Nina to be able to see around a brunette's head and past a blonde's head to see Kohberger. So unfortunately, Kohberger's eyes and face were shielded for me most of the event, unless I made a major effort and potentially blocked Nina's view. And I owed one to Nina since she took one in the team for me and may not risked her own chances of being there. So I wasn't about to keep blocking Nina all the time from being able to see. So I didn't get to see Kohberger's reaction, but some told me that I think it was the aunt that said to Kohberger, if you ever want to talk, there'll be no judgments. I just want to hear what you have to say. That Kohberger looked emotional for the first time, that he felt some sort of sympathy, perhaps registering on his face. I don't know if you guys saw that. I didn't get to see that. I only got to see her. So there's that. When Christy came up, it was, again, let me remind you, I don't begrudge people saying things when their emotions are raw, but when Christy said, and I think she was reading it on behalf of one of her other daughters that weren't there in the courtroom. She said, I wanted to be able to share this. I think it was one of my daughters. She said, I know in school, you are used to getting all A's and B's, but when you get to prison, you'll be getting a lot of big D's. That was a little disgusting, a little over the top, a little immature. And yet, you know what? I don't mind a parting shot once in a while. But there were some people who said to me as well, oh my God, what low class that was. That was low class. So big D's, you're going to get big D's in prison. Yeah, that was a little amateurish, but Christy was reading it on behalf of another family member, I think. So I'll cut it a little grain of salt. And again, she got a clap for that, right? People laughed in the courtroom, and they got a laugh. It was a humorous moment in a very, very tense situation. So cut the families some slack. They're hurting. They're going to say things. I know that I have said some pretty stupid shit when my emotions are raw. So I will cut them some slack. Now, for the most part, that's it. Hitler was wiping his eyes several times. I'm sure you saw that. Hitler had to get a tissue several times. Hitler moved into anger mode at the end and said, look, essentially, you're a piece of trash. You get to spend the rest of your life in jail and as he was asked, you will die in prison. He shamed anyone in the TikTok community, the YouTube community, saying that we cover this case only for clicks. All I have to say about that is a giant one of these. We were not doing this for clicks. Some of us do it because we believe in the presumption of innocence until proven guilty, and some of us fucking believe in constitutional rights in this country. And if you had to violate someone's constitutional rights, which I am certain they did with Bryan Kohberger, I am certain they did, then there should be consequences. And regardless of whether Bryan Kohberger is guilty and spends the rest of his life in jail, so be it. But know what? Let's have a day of reckoning for you motherfuckers who broke the law and violated civil liberties and trampled all over every American citizen's civil liberties in order to get him. So let's not forget about that. And that's why I say at the beginning of this thing, is this over? In some regards it is. In some regards it's not. Is it over for the families? Yes, it's over for the families. I am probably not going to continue to say I'm doing this in any way, shape, or form for the families, because the families have expressed in the courtroom they want to move on. So while I as a family member, if I had a loved one that died, I would want to know what really happened. It's clear that that family, for the most part, those families don't care what happened. They believe that they do know what happened. They believe they've got closure. Only 1 or 2 family members said, I want to know what happened. Have the courage to tell us. And as Hitler said, and this is a fair point that Hitler said, can you believe, if he really is a sociopath, if he really is a psychopath, if he is the things that you say that he is, why would you take what he says true anyways? So you want him to tell you what happened, but why would you ever believe it anyways if you believe the things that you do? Because a person who is the things you say is only going to tell a version of the story that aggrandizes himself. So at the end of the day, you need to let it go. And that's what Hitler was saying to everybody in the YouTube community as well. This is over. Everyone needs to let it go. We will never know what happened. But there needs to be, in my opinion, a day of reckoning for law enforcement. Just as I was coming on, someone was sharing and I couldn't vet it. So please don't repeat it over and over again as if it's true and factual, unless somebody can show the link. That I think the New York Times posted a note, an update that there was an evidence refrigerator with Bryan Kohberger's sample of DNA in it that lost power, and the DNA was destroyed, which means that nobody could double check the work. And I say that if that really happened, fuck you guys. Are you kidding me? You corrupt sons of bitches. They're doing that because they know that at this point, everyone's going to be compelled to stop talking about it and the case is over. Now we can destroy evidence, tear the house down, destroy the DNA sample, and tell everybody that, hey, there's nothing to see here and we will never answer your questions. Now, moving forward, as I want to spend some time for some questions and answers, but I'm not paying attention so much right now. Questions and answers. Press conference. I go to the press conference. My heart was beating out of my chest because at the press conference, there was a wall of every fucking media channel out there. And I had pictures. I was sending you videos from the line. I was sending you videos. I'm in line and reporters from 48 Hours and major news stations are raising their hand during the press conference. My hand went up the first time and I thought I was going to have a heart attack. My chest was beating so hard. I'm like, am I really going to do this? Am I going to start opening my mouth and every fucking camera is going to swivel to the left and zoom in on me and be like, Lee from the Devil's Advocates, I just have one question, you assholes. I was prepared to do that, of course, in a respectful manner. Let me tell you 2 things. One, my hand was up 12 times. I held it up there nice and high. And every single time an officer was looking right at me in the eyes, every single time, and he would pick somebody beside me, to the left of me, to the right of me, never look. He would look me in the eyes while I had my hand up, and then he would go left or right of me, you. And he was picking people I think that he knew from the press. People that he probably knew were going to give him softballs. That's my take. I wasn't going to ask a rude question. Let me tell you what I was going to ask. And I did start to get more calm as my hand went up, because I realized they're not going to call on me. So there was that part of me like, I can raise my hand all day long. They're not going to call on me. Of course, I would have probably had a heart attack if they actually called on me, because again, I'm intimidated. I don't like being on camera as much as you guys think I am. I'm kind of a shy guy as much as you think I'm not. So anyways, point being is that I was a little bit nervous, but here's my question. I watched 5 or so experts get up there to answer people's questions. And I realized, I was tweeting this, if you want to call it tweeting, I was texting this in my Discord channel. Every person that went up there, that's 1 for 1 of somebody that told us nothing that we didn't already know. There's 2 for 2 that went up there giving a press conference to answer all our questions and said nothing we don't really know. There's 3 for 3 of people who just got up there and told us nothing that we don't already know. There's 4 for 4. There's 5 for 5. So my question, when the officer said, later on today, we're going to be releasing a bunch of police documents that will be redacted, my question was going to be this, and I was going to try to ask it as politely as possible, which was going to be, I don't know if I missed it, but I feel like I've heard 5 different experts tell us nothing that we haven't known already for 2.5 years. You say police documents are coming out this afternoon, but they'll be redacted. Will there be even one piece of information at all in those police documents that we don't already know and have known for 2.5 years? That was what I was going to ask. And I realized that was going to sound a little shitty, but I was going to try to do as politely as possible. I may have missed it. I didn't hear anything today that I haven't known for 2.5 years. So when you release all the documents, are we going to finally see something that we didn't already know for 2.5 years? Now, let me tell you another disgusting moment that tells you how narrative shaping works. Multiple times, this phrase was used at the press conference, at the press conference after, multiple times. We really wanted that to be true, but we couldn't get there. So did you ever definitively prove that Bryan Kohberger knew any of the girls? We wanted so badly for that to be true, but no, there was no evidence that Bryan Kohberger knew any of the girls. Okay, what about the Mad Greek restaurant? You know, we really wanted that to be true, but there's no evidence that Bryan Kohberger was ever at the Mad Greek restaurant. Okay, what about the, this, that, we really wanted that to be true. What about the murder weapon? We really wanted it to be true that we would find it, but no, we have no murder weapon. No, we have no clothes. No, we have nothing linking him to the case other than the speck of DNA. No. And furthermore, the disgusting languages, we wanted it to be true. We so wanted this to be true. And I don't know about you, but they'll shit on YouTubers how we want the story to be something else, but they wanted the story to be their narrative. We want Kohberger to be the guy, and we want to have proven it to you, and we could not. After 2.5+ years, we still can't prove to you definitively. As Bill Thompson said, we can't place Bryan Kohberger in the house. After 2.5 years, they can't place Bryan Kohberger in the house. Are you fucking kidding me? 2.5 years. I've been waiting. I've been begging for the moment you could give me one smoking gun to be like, oh, holy shit. There is no question he did it. And you know what they said? We so wanted to give you something, but we have nothing. We can't prove to you Bryan Kohberger did it. Here's the other moment that I was going back to the courtroom, a thing that Bill Thompson said, and I'm going to end, I think, on this thought, and then I'll open up for questions and start watching your questions. This is something I caught when Bill Thompson at the press conference was talking. Yeah, it was at the press conference, so I'm not out of order. I'm not going back to the courtroom. When Bill Thompson was talking about why the plea deal came in last moment, this is what he said that caught my attention. Up to the very last moment, the defense and Bryan Kohberger have insisted that he is factually innocent. And my legal brain, I know I'm not a lawyer, but my legal brain said, holy shit, factually innocent. Do you know what that means? My legal mind knew the term factually innocent means something. You know what it means in my mind? And let me explain. It's not 100% what I thought, but I'm going to tell you how it's very, 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 very close. Factually innocent means it's essentially what you would call an Alford plea. An Alford plea is, you are going to convict me of this crime because you've got evidence for days and you will convince a jury that I did it, but it's factually incorrect. I didn't do it. You are factually wrong. I am factually innocent. The facts, if they were allowed to be presented, would prove that I'm innocent, but you're going to convict me anyways, and there's nothing I can do about it. And so I will take a guilty plea because I'm factually innocent, but you're still going to convict me. And I realize you're going to convict me. So I'll take the one thing you can give me, which is sparing my life and taking death off the table, in exchange for admitting to something that I didn't do because you have me convicted. In that you have shut down. And here's another thing that Bryan Thompson said over and over again. Hitler made it clear Kohberger would not be allowed to present alternative suspects. And when he did, they were forced to take a plea. He said that essentially about 3 times. He said, when it became clear Hitler was not going to allow them to present certain evidence, they took a plea deal. That doesn't mean, pay attention. It doesn't mean the defense didn't have evidence. It meant Hitler was not going to allow them to present the evidence. And that leads to an Alford plea. If you know you're not going to be allowed to present evidence that would prove your client's innocence, then what it's saying is you're going to convict me no matter what I do. You've already decided you're going to convict me, and you will not allow anyone to see anything that would let me show that I was factually innocent. Factually innocent. That's the legal term. Now, let me say, I ran this by an attorney, and I said, Am I missing something about the phrase factually innocent? Is this a Alford plea? And an Alford plea looks exactly like a guilty plea in all aspects, save for one. And this is where it's not going to be an Alford plea, technically. An Alford plea still goes through all the same steps of a person admitting guilt to a crime and signing paperwork saying, yes, I am guilty of the crime. And nothing looks different on paper. Additionally, the state of Idaho does not require anyone to say the word Alford plea when making that type of plea, which is to say, factually, I'm innocent, but you're still going to convict me. And so I will sign a plea deal saying I'm guilty because you're going to convict me and there's nothing I can do, but I'm factually innocent. Now, the problem is that the Alford plea technically isn't a plea if you are asked a question like Kohberger was asked, are you admitting guilt because you are guilty? Yes, that kind of removes the Alford plea. An Alford plea basically is, I'm not going to say I'm guilty. I'm going to sign a piece of paper saying I accept the guilt charge, that I won't fight the guilty charge. But you don't say the words, I did it, I'm guilty. You remain silent on that. So that Kohberger said, I'm accepting guilt because I am guilty, should remove the Alford plea option. Everything else looks like an Alford plea, which is that I am factually innocent. That's what Bill Thompson said. Up to the last minute, Bryan Kohberger has maintained his factual innocence, meaning the facts would show he couldn't have done it, but you're going to convict me anyways. Alford plea. But him saying, yes, I did it, would take that off the table. Now, here's where the kicker becomes. There is some 42 days after sentencing. I thought it was 45. Somebody corrected me saying it's 42. There's some 42 days after the sentencing plea, which an appeal still can be made on behalf of that guilty plea, one of which could be the excuse of ineffective counsel. If Ann Taylor didn't explain, okay, let me explain. If Ann Taylor told Bryan Kohberger that essentially we're doing an Alford plea, we are going to maintain your factual innocence, that factually they can't prove you did it, but they're going to convict you anyways. And then later on, we'll have more avenues to fight this on appeal, regardless of you waiving appeals, because that's also part of the Alford plea. You can have a deal that says no appeals, but if it's an Alford plea and you're factually innocent, then you can still have options. And if during the 42 days after this sentencing is done, Bryan Kohberger makes a move to say, Ann Taylor incorrectly told me it was okay to answer the question, are you admitting guilt because you are guilty? And I said, yes, because my attorney advised me that's how we do an Alford plea. And then I find out later on that's not how you do an Alford plea. Bryan Kohberger could, in that scenario, possibly say, I had ineffective counsel. My counsel lied to me or misled me or is wrong. And I said something based on my attorney's say, hey, look, we got this. We're gonna fight this. You just maintain your factual innocence and we'll have more avenues. But if she mistakenly or on purpose could have said, oh, whatever, then he could make an offer. He could make an offer to the court. Now, granted, the judge would still have to agree. The judge would have to review that. The judge would have to decide. And Hippler hasn't shown any desire to do something like that. That Kohberger had ineffective counsel, that he was misled by his counsel. But so the chances are slim that Bryan Kohberger is going to try to make some kind of appeal in his 42-day appeal window, but it could happen. And if it does, this is not over. For the families, let me reiterate, and then I will focus on questions and answers, I promise, because we're already past my 1 hour mark. We're 15 minutes past. I'll try to do 15 minutes of questions and answers. So in a way, this is over for the families. I can no longer say that I'm doing this for the families, or that if I was the family member, I'd want answers. They already said in court they don't want the answers. They want to move on with their lives. So let's respect the fact that they want to move on for their lives. That doesn't mean that we have the answers that we want. We're not satisfied. And I want law enforcement to explain some of the actions, especially if something shitty happened, like a evidence refrigerator went down and it destroyed Bryan Kohberger's DNA. That's fucking ridiculous. Anyways, I don't know if that's true, so I don't want to keep repeating that. So there you go. Title said, is this over? Is it finally over? For the families, I feel like it is. They don't want to know at this point. Yes, there is at least one family, I believe, that wants to find out that Bryan Kohberger has been killed in prison, and for them, that will be closure. That'll be the end. But everybody else, I think, is just okay to let Kohberger spend the rest of his life in jail and be over with it. And they hope to never hear his name again. And so for that respect, I understand that. Now, all I can say about that is, unfortunately, for those of us who believe in questioning the law enforcement tactics and the civil rights abuses that may have happened and just want closure. If they did everything by the book, then that's fine. We'll put this to bed and it'll be over for us too. But if other people walked that were involved, if Bryan Kohberger was indeed factually innocent but had to take a plea because they weren't going to allow him to present exculpatory evidence, if it turns out Bethany did see somebody else in the house and it wasn't Bryan Kohberger and they kept her from testifying and Hitler wouldn't allow her to testify to that when she did know somebody else, and there's lots of reasons to believe that's the case. If that's the case, then it's not over for us. And I'll keep asking questions. But for the families, it's over. All right. At this moment, I would like to start paying attention. I'm sorry that I didn't do this ahead of time. If my mods have grabbed a question or two that you want to bring to my attention, let me know. I'm watching now to see if there's anything we want to do this. I'm just reading some text. I don't remember this moment exactly. What about Bethany hearing that loud firework or tight noise and seeing a flash around 3 a.m. and a neighbor also heard it? So I'm presuming you were suggesting it's a gunshot that was maybe, again, Bethany Funk, according to the defense, has exculpatory evidence, something that would show Bryan Kohberger may not have done it, may not have done it alone, somehow would exonerate Bryan Kohberger, and she was being kept from testifying, even though Hitler said, you do realize that you had the right to force Bethany Funk to subpoena. I think that's what he's talking about. He didn't say Bethany specifically. What Hitler said was, you do realize you did have the right to have somebody subpoenaed and force them to testify. And I think he was talking about Bethany. I think they knew Bethany had something that was exculpatory, meaning it would help Bryan Kohberger's case and shed reasonable doubt. And they gave up on that. They gave up on their pursuit because I believe that they knew that they weren't going to be able to get her to come in, that they were not going to get Bethany Funk to come in. Any other questions, comments about that night? Jack Showalter had, and I don't know the facts on this. Jack Showalter had 94 spots of blood in his apartment. BK none. I can't riff on that because I don't know those facts. An ineffective assistance of counsel claim can be invoked under Strickland versus Washington even after the 42 days. I believe that's correct. Yes. So it's not, there's multiple, and one of the other avenues, as I've stated before, if it ever comes out, I've said this before, at the sentencing, or at the plea deal, the facts were established. Bryan Kohberger entered the house at this time, he exited the house at this time, and he did these things, and he did them alone. If it ever comes out later on that those things cannot be true, i.e. Kohberger was 10 miles away on camera at a gas station when the murders happened, according to what they said, that means he could not have done it, and it doesn't matter how many times he said, yes, I did it. If it's proven he could not have done it, then that'll change everything, regardless of lack of appeal. There are multiple avenues for it not to be over. But we have to be careful because those are kind of like very unlikely scenarios, but there are scenarios. Somebody says that Bryan Kohberger may have a new team and was going to turn in an Alford plea of something afterwards. I don't know. Or sorry, not an Alford plea, but an appeal. What about the unidentified person who came home with Kaylee from the corner club? This may be exculpatory. There's a lot of potential exculpatory evidence, and that's why Bill Thompson said, in my opinion, when Hitler made it clear that the defense would not be allowed to bring in that evidence, that's when they threw up the plea deal. It doesn't mean that they didn't have evidence. It meant Hitler was not going to allow it into the courtroom. which someone could argue means that he was getting an unfair trial, and a higher paid attorney, which I don't think Kohberger can afford. So maybe somebody pro bono could kind of come in and try to do something, or the Innocence Project if they really felt. But I don't think there's a lot of sympathy. That's the problem. You need to find somebody who really believes Bryan Kohberger wasn't there for them to take it on. If everybody in America, including attorneys, think that he probably did do it, they're not going to go rush to his defense. So, Lee, if he has to submit DNA sample at booking into the prison, might they compare that to the sheath sample, all they used for the IgE? Right. Here's the thing. If what I read was correct, and I would love it if one of you sleuths out there can find it real quick. If what I read in my Discord channel was correct, that the New York Times, I think it was, not the Post even, but the New York Times said that an evidence refrigerator, the one specifically holding the DNA evidence from the knife sheath, lost power, and the sample's been destroyed or degraded or something like that, and they've lost it, then yeah, there will be no way for them to compare anything because the sample's destroyed. If that sample's destroyed, nothing smells more like a cover-up than that. But I don't know. I don't want to keep repeating it I'm gonna keep repeating it, but I don't want to go too far down to somebody who can prove it to me that really is true. I feel like this is a sarcastic comment, but I'm going to highlight it anyways. So the thumbs up selfie picture really wasn't him just saying, hey, look, Mom, I learned how to button my top button, and it wasn't a mission accomplished. I killed people. Again, those photos, a lot of those photos were manipulated by the press. They were manipulated. They used things like changing a white balance to make it look more creepy, do things to crop in and make it look more creepy. They admitted in some places in small little fine print, this has been altered for dramatic effect. And so, yes, a lot of people think that a photo like that is admission of guilt. I don't know what to tell you. That is what it is. Some of you are going to say a photo is admission of guilt. New records are dropped. I can't keep up. There's already 800, I think, megabytes or 800 gigabytes of material. I haven't even started looking through the documents. And I have a live tonight with Pete Altieri from Murder Metal Mayhem. By the way, if you like that show, you want to check in early and catch the very beginning. As you know, Pete does a little skit at the beginning of his shows. There's a new skit. You might want to catch that. I think hopefully you'll find it funny. So check into a Murder Metal Mayhem tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time if you want to see a special new intro that Pete's got. I think he aired it one time. We're gonna see it again tonight when we go live tonight at 5 o'clock. So I've got a lot of work to do. At some point, I've got other things to do in between this, and at some time, I'm going to get in there reviewing those documents. This person, Dreamcatcher, you said it was in the documents today. If by it you mean the reference that the refrigerator that the refrigerator with the DNA of Kohberger's DNA was lost power and was degraded and destroyed, fuck me. Are you kidding me? I hope if it's in those documents, I'm gonna lose my shit. All right. Do I believe that it was a group killing? Yes, I believe more than one person did it. I think more than one person was involved in getting people into the house. I think there was a lot of people who knew at least something was going to happen that night. Whether they knew everything that was going to happen that night, I don't know, but I do think multiple people knew what was going to happen that night. Bryan Kohberger, even if he was there, I don't think did it alone. And that's the million-dollar question. But again, at the end of the day, how long are you going to keep fighting a fight when he's admitted he's done it and is allegedly going to go away for the rest of his life? Now, granted, if Kohberger all of a sudden comes out with a new legal team and an appeal, then game on. Then game on. But we'll be all over that like water and rice and a paper plate, a cold cup of milk in a snowstorm. Major pain. Anyways, I'm starting to get that back down again. Who cares? Nobody knows that movie anymore. It's still a funny movie. Anyways, yeah, Molly, I've heard, I haven't seen it yet. I've heard the documents show that Molly McMichaels, I think it was, did not see Kohberger. Remember everybody said that she was going to testify she saw Kohberger? She did not see Kohberger. And that's coming out in the police documents I've heard. So a lot of surprises. Or not surprising. I didn't think she saw him anyways. So I guess it's not surprising. But surprising to those who think, oh yeah, they had him dead to rights. Molly saw him that night. No, she didn't. No, she didn't. And it's in the documents they're releasing, I believe. And they knew she didn't. All right. Yeah, somebody was suggesting donating to get him a badass lawyer. The problem is the majority of America either believes he's guilty or they believe that believing that he's innocent is going to get them kicked in the teeth. It's not like a Luigi Mangione situation where it would be easy to raise him money. It would be super hard, but it would be interesting. I'm looking for some last minute questions and get out of here. It's been an hour and a half. I usually only do an hour. A lot of comments coming in that I could talk about for a long time, and I don't want to do that right now. I need to take a break and get ready for another show and all those good things. Somebody was correcting earlier when we said Showalter had 94 spots of blood. It was actually supposed to be 4. So again, this is why we don't like to do these things on the fly so much. Somebody else is saying, yeah, this is all in the new NPD things. I need to get to that as quickly as possible. I got a full-time job on this damn channel. Full-time job. Your questions are coming in super fast and furious. And so I'm trying to decide if I need to do another live later sometime here. In the documents dropped today, I'm assuming this is by NPD, game bags were in the house. They were used by hunters and the military. Thoughts? Well, I do have thoughts, but I don't want to say them out loud. If that's true, and I believe that you're probably correct, again, I haven't seen the documents myself, so let me take some time to see those documents. And if that's true, yes, I have thoughts, and I will share them. So, but I'll refrain at the moment. The flash at 3 a.m. or whatever, the sound of the gun is the exculpatory evidence, maybe. Unless they flat out said it is the exculpatory. I think there's more. I think there's more exculpatory evidence than that, to be honest with you. But that's my take. Devil's advocates, do you believe that the IGG is a mere violation of terms of service, or do you believe it would be an amendment violation? I believe they broke constitutional amendments, the 4th Amendment to illegal searches and seizures by going, it was an illegal search by going to the database and the way that they did. I believe, I can't prove it, that one of the ways that they did it was completely illegal, not just a violation of terms of service. Let me give you an example of one. I don't know this is how it happened. Let me give you one example. If the federal government took Bryan Kohberger's DNA and submitted it to 23andMe or Ancestry.com or a site like that, and made a fake profile lying, saying that they were Bryan Kohberger. Hey, I'm Bryan Kohberger and I'm submitting this DNA. I want to see what kind of relatives I have, and lied about who they were to get a profile built for Bryan Kohberger because he wasn't in the system. I would consider that illegal. That is falsifying somebody's identity and using that in a manner, and there probably was credit card information that potentially was used. It would have all kinds of avenues for something completely illegal. That's just one example. There are other reasons to believe that law enforcement actually knew things about Bryan Kohberger's movements because they were illegally surveilling him against his 4th Amendment rights. And so they were illegally surveilling him. And they may have known things that we don't know, but they can't admit that they know because it was illegal for them to have got it the way that they did. And by not having a trial, they don't have to explain to you the constitutional rights they violated to get him. And if they can violate your constitutional rights, use information that would never be allowed in a court of law to put pressure on you to accept guilt on something because otherwise you're going to go down anyways, that shit can happen to anybody. Again, this is what's happening in cases where everyone in America is watching. What are they going to do to the little guy who doesn't have everyone in the country microanalyzing and coming to their defense on, hey, wait a minute, the little guy has no chance. All right, people, I'm going to get out. I could be here all day. I super apologize for all the people whose questions are not going to get answered tonight by me. Not that I am the definitive answer. You know that by now. I don't claim to be, but I just looked. I probably had 100 comments that I couldn't see. Big room today at 294 for me. I don't usually have that big of a show, so I'm a little overwhelmed. I am going on tonight with Pete Alturi from Murder Metal Mayhem. I told him that we were originally going to talk about Rex Heuermann in the Long Island serial killer case. However, considering that I was just in the courtroom for the sentencing and this is new hot information, Pete suggested that we talk about, and I suggested we talk about Bryan Kohberger tonight. So we're going to talk about that more tonight. So if you have some questions you didn't get answered, maybe send me an email at devilsadvocates2024@gmail.com, and I'll see about highlighting that for the show tonight. I'm so sorry that I didn't get to everybody's questions. I do lives every day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I take the weekends off. I do lives every single day of the week. And so please take another shot if you still have questions that you want to hear my answers on. And I realize I'm not the definitive answer, so you don't need to hear it from me. But if you want another crack at hearing something about it, please consider coming to one of my other lives. I have a website, devilsadvocates.info, that has the schedule of the week and what times I go on. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Appreciate you. Love you guys as well. For those of you who are giving me lots of love and support. And Nina, if you're still here, I owe you one. I hope someday I can pay it forward to you. Have a great one, everybody.